sugar and cheese. That's actually so nice.
Good afternoon. Call this meeting to order. CAMPO, February 14th, St. Valentine's Day, at 4:30. Can I get roll call, please?
Chairperson Kimbrough.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Bonkowski.
Here.
Member Bagwell.
Here.
Member Erb.
Here.
Member Hastings.
Here.
Member McQuarrie.
Here.
Ex officio Member Rosenberg. Quorum is present.
I guess I should turn the mic on too, huh? Is there any changes in the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to mention that we did agendize an ethics training, which happens annually, but due to Mr. Randy Gaw resigning, until we can fill that vacancy, we postponed that training, so that's not going to happen tonight after RTC.
Oh, thank you. Disclosures. Any member of the CAMPO board need talk about any disclosure during that item on the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have a disclosure on item 6A.
I think that's RTC though.
Yeah, we're on CAMPO.
He's got
Has he got it 6A too? Oh, he gets both. The TAP grant. All right, thank you. We'll deal with it when we get to that on the agenda then. Now we have public comment. Is there anybody from the public wish to come forward on any item? But if it's on the agenda, it'd be better if you came up when we discussed it. You can come forward now. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to approval of the minutes from our January 10th meeting. Do I have a discussion or a motion?
I move to approve the minutes of the Carson Area Metropolitan Planning Organization for January 10th, 2018 as presented.
I have a motion. I have a second.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? No. Okay, good. Thank you. So let's move on to the public meeting item, 6A, Prioritize Transportation Alternatives Program, the TAP grant submitted within the CAMPO planning area. And this is the one, Chaz, that you said you had to disclose?
Yes. And this is my disclosure statement. NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from participating when I have a disqualifying conflict. I serve on the board of directors for Muscle Powered, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Ethics Commission has opined that on line item issues related to funding, public officers like myself who volunteer on a board of a nonprofit has a commitment in a private capacity to the interests of that organization. However, here the item before the RTC is not the line item issue related to funding contemplated by the Ethics Commission. Instead, this is merely an approval to apply for a grant. Therefore, a reasonable person in my situation would not be materially affected by a private commitment to Muscle Powered. As such, I will be participating and voting on this matter.
Thank you. All right, so is this Haley?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this item regards the prioritization of TAP infrastructure projects located within the CAMPO boundary. At the January meeting, RTC approved the submission of one TAP grant from Carson City Public Works for a multi-use path extending from Colorado Street to the Edmond Sports Complex. The call for projects opened on November 28th with the application deadline of February 26th. CAMPO has spoken with Carson City, Douglas County, and Lyon County, and only one application is being submitted within the CAMPO area. Prioritization points are crucial because unlike Washoe and Clark counties, CAMPO does not receive set-aside TAP funding and is required to compete with the rural counties. That being said, it's important for the CAMPO board to allocate priority points for an infrastructure project so staff is able to use that as support for leverage to compete for the TAP funding. Those are my comments, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions of staff?
Just general. Just in general, when you say priority points, you're just saying we're going to say it's a priority project for CAMPO, and therefore you get X number of points on the application.
That's correct, and I believe the priority points, it's an additional 10 points. Yeah.
10 points. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just to add to that, where those points go is when we end up, our internal team that's reviewing those, the priority project for this area gets a little bonus. So that's to as Haley said, because the other MPO areas actually get their own funding for this, whereas Campo has to compete statewide. So we felt, as the only MPO not getting their direct funding, they deserve a little bit extra, leg up. And you have a history of good delivery on good projects for this program, so.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So does that mean that none of the rurals have the opportunity to get bonus points? Only Campo?
That is correct.
That's great. Wow. Any other questions from staff or comments? Seeing none, bring it to the public. Anybody from the public want to come forward to speak to this item on the agenda? Seeing none, bring it back to the board for a motion or more discussion.
I move to prioritize of transportation alternative programs TAP grants submitted within the Campo planning area.
Have a motion, a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Brankowski. Any more discussion? Seeing none, call for the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimous. Thank you. Good job. 6B, for possible action, approval of an amendment to the 2040 Regional Transportation Plan, RTP, with incorporated Fixing America's Surface Transportation FAST Act Safety Performance Targets. That's a mouthful. Go ahead.
Thank you. This item is an amendment to the 2040 RTP with incorporated safety performance targets as required by the FAST Act. In December, Campo approved the safety performance targets, and a 30-day public comment period was opened for residents to provide feedback on the proposed targets and the amendment. No comments were received, so the amendment and the safety performance targets stand as is. Those are my comments.
Any questions, staff? Yes, Brett?
Not a question, but a comment.
Comment, sorry.
I understand the need for this. It's a requirement. But I just want to be on the record again saying that our numbers are so low as far as these targets go, ranging from 0 to 4 fatalities in a year, that one accident is going to make or break those numbers. So I just think that we need to keep that in mind, and that this is something that we have to do, and we're doing the best job that we can, but it's not really relevant material in our area, in my opinion.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Chase.
Since I wasn't here in December, I was somewhat confused by some of the numbers here, and I sat down with staff and they graciously clued me into what was going on, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that needs to be explained, some of these numbers in the chart here. So.
Yeah, they're hard to read,
Yes.
hard to understand how they work.
Any other comments, questions of staff? Seeing none, don't call for anything. Anybody from the audience want to come forward and speak this item on the agenda? Seeing nobody, bring it back to the board for a motion or any other comments or discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve an amendment to the 2040 Regional Transportation Plan with incorporated Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act Safety Performance Targets. That's a mouthful.
Yes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Any other discussion? Calling for the question, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimous. Thank you. Now, what did I do? Throw away my here it is. 6C. To approve, possible action to approve the submittal of a request to Nevada Department of Transportation to classify North Lampa Lane between US 50 and Bud Highway as a minor collector roadway. Dirk.
Thank you, sir. So the section of roadway is south of US 50, and it is Lampa Lane, and it is north of Minlow. And so a little history on this road. Currently, this road is a local road. Back in 2006, when the freeway was extended to US 50, a signal was installed. And then in 2013, with development on the southwest corner, there was some curb and gutter improvements that were installed. So that's kind of a little history of that intersection. Over the years, this intersection has been growing. The use of it has been growing, and a lot of it has to do with kind of the traffic circulation and the easy access to the freeway. So Carson City is requesting that is consulting with the NPO. So the way this works is that per the FHWA guidelines, a city is the one that makes the request, but if you're within an MPO, you should be consulting with the MPO. So the way that we've structured this is that we're sharing this item with the CAMPO board, which is comprised of the MPO board, but also the Carson City RTC. So the characteristics of a minor collector include access and they include circulation. So when we look at Lampa Lane in this area, we do see circulation happening. It's not just access coming from land uses, but it's access through the road. We did have conversations with NDOT staff, and they agree with this kind of the assumptions or the thoughts that we have on Lampa Lane. So the proposed alignment is going to go from US 50 south, and then it would align with Butt-Eye Way and Airport Road. And the reason why you want to connect it to those roads is because those are collector roadways currently. You wouldn't want it to connect it to a road like Desatoya, which is a local road, because per the guidelines, you really want to have a collector road connect to another connector road or a roadway of a higher classification. Some things to note is if this road becomes a minor collector roadway, it becomes a federally eligible road, which means we can use federal funds on it. So staff kind of looks at that as a benefit. Additionally, as development occurs in this area, it would help with right-of-way dedications and kind of firming up that, providing support for that type of dedication. So there is a map in the packet that includes kind of an overview of federally eligible roadways. It includes arterial roadways. It includes collector roadways. So that's kind of more of a reference. And then there's also, we kind of added the alignment of the collector roadway on the map so you can kind of see where Lampa Lane would extend to. So that concludes my comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of staff? Yes.
Dirk, is there a South Lampa Lane?
There is a South Lampa Lane, south of Fairview Drive. And so this is North Lampa Lane.
Where does it change? Because it seems to me everything south of Highway 50 would be South Lampa.
I think the reason why you have a north and south is because the two Lampa lanes don't connect, and so between Edmonds and Fairview Drive, there's a Lampa Lane, so that's one of your South Lampa Lane, and then you have the next leg of Lampa Lane, which starts at Menlo Drive and goes all the way to College Parkway.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I'm stumped. I thought I understood. Is this where Golden Gate is and the Arco Station?
Correct.
Well, currently you go down and you cut through the apartments through there, and that's really dangerous piece of roadway because the kids and the families and all the hundreds of cars and the doors opening. And this actually shows an alignment to Butt-Eye, which is not true. You got to go through the apartments and then. So I don't understand this.
Well, correct. Some of this is a future alignment.
Future alignment.
Part of it, and so we're classifying a portion that's existing and a portion that's not. And the points that you brought up is staff's concern with, development moving forward. You have more traffic on Menlo Drive.
Yeah.
That's a local road. You have apartments. Airport Road, which is a collector roadway, has driveways,
Right.
has residential uses, and so we're trying to kind of look out for the long run of this area. And so that's why we really feel that Lampa Lane should be a collector.
So is there more right-of-way in there to get wider in there through that?
There is right now where the road is, there's 60 feet of right-of-way, and that 60 foot is not being used south of Menlo Drive. Some of this right-of-way was dedicated with a parcel map. The date's escaping me, but we've secured 60 feet of right-of-way, so moving forward, that 60 foot would be maintained, and that's kind of the standard for the.
So you're going to go up through the wetlands and everything then eventually there, that ditch that's in there? Wow. So this just gives you opportunity for funding to do that then and get all those cars out of that poor apartment complex. And people take their dogs out and their kids are out and baby strollers, and it's pretty busy over there. All right, thank you. Good clarity. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, does anybody from the public wish to come forward? Seeing none, bring it back to the board for a motion or any more discussion.
I move to approve the submittal of a request to the Nevada Department of Transportation to classify North Lampa Lane between US 50 and Buckeye Way as a minor collector roadway.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from John. Any other discussion? Seeing none, call for the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Carries unanimous. Great. Last item on the, well, not last, but last, for information only, information on CAMPO's annual obligation report document.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you noted, this is an informational-only item regarding CAMPO's annual obligation report for fiscal year 2017. Per federal regulations, MPOs are required to publish an annual listing of projects for which federal transportation funds were obligated in the previous programmed year. The term obligated refers to the government's funding commitment and doesn't necessarily mean the completion or the total cost of a project. For FCA projects, obligation occurs when a grant's awarded. For FHWA projects, obligation occurs when there is an executed project agreement and a notice to proceed for a specific phase. And the attached document, this is a draft document, and we're going to be continuing to work with NDOT to finalize and send off to FHWA. Those conclude my comments.
Any questions of staff? Nope. Anybody from the public wish to come forward to speak to this item? Seeing none, we bring it back, but it's a non-action item, so we don't have to vote on that. So now we're in internal communications, administrative matters, and we're at future agenda items.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm preparing for an extended vacation. I will be out, so I will be missing the March meeting, but Mr. Goring here will run that meeting smoothly and efficiently, as you all have come to expect. A couple items coming at you in March. We have a Title VI program update that's due. This is the program that ensures that the level and quality of transportation that we provide is without regard to race, color, or national origin, and we're required to do this every 2 years. So we're going to bring that program to you. And we're also working on a transportation improvement program, a TIP update for that 2018 STBG funding for the Fairview Reconstruction Project from South Carson to Roop. I would like to take the opportunity to note that we're currently in the middle of our 30-day public comment period as required by our public participation plan. That's running from January 30th through the 28th of this month. So far, we have not received any comments, but we encourage the public to comment. They can do so by submitting an email or in person or by mail to the Public Works Office over on Buckeye. Looking ahead to April, there is a big thing we're working on. We're developing the next 2-year Unified Planning Work Program. So we anticipate bringing a draft to CAMPO in April and having a public hearing to receive comments on that program.
Thank you.
That's it for now. Thank you.
Board comments. Information only. Status reports and comments from members of the CAMPO board. Start with Sandra.
I'm back. Just to let you know, progress continues on our statewide long-range plan. It's been a little quiet for a while we've been working out some of the details. We're really emphasizing a performance-based planning process. So we hope to work through some of the details of that and then be coming out with some good information in the coming months. As part of that, but sort of a separate effort, we're doing a I-11 Planning and Environment Linkages document. While it's unlikely to come through this area directly, certainly may be affected by it. So I thought you should be aware of that. We'll be doing a series of public information meetings starting at the end of March, starting in the Vegas area and working our way up north. I don't have the exact dates for the Carson area yet, but by our March meeting, I should have a specific date for you then. So we're excited to keep the planning process moving on that corridor.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Well,
I've got nothing at this time.
John's got nothing. Brad.
Sandra, is there any information that you can provide us now about the Highway 50 fencing project for the wild horses?
I don't have any information in front of me. I could bring that back next month if you guys would like a report on that. Probably won't be me, but someone can bring that information.
That would be good since it
Okay.
was in the paper.
Yeah.
In the meantime, if I'm not breaking any rules, I can our director presented some information at our board meeting on Monday. I can provide those slides to Lucia or Dirk to send to you guys, and then we can also do a presentation next month if you'd like. Okay.
Thank you.
It shouldn't break any rules, I would hope, just
Oh,
information.
yeah, it's
huh?
public information. It's
Yeah,
already out there, so, yeah.
Well, Jazz, no more comments from the board, since this is the last chance for any public to come forward to speak to any matter they wish to. Seeing none, bring it back to the board, or our next meeting will be on March 14th, which is not a special holiday for special people like this one in the Sierra Room. And then I call for adjournment. Make a motion,
Move to adjourn.
move to adjourn. So when would you like to be back?
5 till.
5 till for RTC.
I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Carson City Regional Transportation Commission. Today is Wednesday, February 14th, 2018. We are in the Sierra Room at the Community Center in lovely downtown Carson City. Can we have a roll call, please, Kathy?
Chairperson Monkowski. Here. Vice Chairperson Bagwell. Here. Commissioner Kimbrough. Here. Commissioner McQuarrie. Here. Quorum is present.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda tonight?
Yes, Mr. Chair, as I mentioned at the CAMPO meeting, we did notice an ethics training tonight for after the RTC meeting. Because we still have a vacancy on the RTC, we're going to postpone that till we can fill that vacancy. My second request, staff would like to request that we hear items 6A and 6B as one single presentation together, and that we take action for both after the presentation since the items are related.
It'll be different people voting on each one.
Excuse me, yes, so still separate motions just after the presentation.
Correct. Okay. Any changes to the agenda by any of the commissioners? No? All right, so then we will amend the agenda as noted. Item 3 on the agenda, any disclosures? We will have disclosures on items 6A and 6B, I believe.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I will abstain on 6A and 6B, and I have a statement here to read.
We'll do it when we get to it.
Oh, when we get to it, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Public comment. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak at this time? You do not have to speak now. You can speak when an item comes up. I see nobody approaching. We're now on the approval of the minutes. And there's a correction. Can I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the minutes of January 10th, 2018 with a correction on item number 5 to indicate it had an abstention.
Second.
It's already been made. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Passes unanimously. We are now on to the public meeting items. Item 6A and 6B will be presented together, so we will now take disclosures, starting with Commissioner McQuarrie.
NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from participating when I have a disqualifying conflict. The Nevada Commission on Ethics has opined that when a substantial and continuing business relationship exists, there is a disqualifying conflict. In my private capacity, I am an employee of Loomis & Associates, the design consultant on the Curry Street project and the interconnecting street project. Therefore, there's a substantial business relationship with Loomis. Because a reasonable person in my position would be materially affected by this relationship, I will be abstaining from participating on this matter.
Thank you. I also have a disclosure. NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from participating when I have a disqualifying conflict. The Nevada Commission on Ethics has opined that where a substantial and continuing business relationship exists, there is a disqualifying conflict. In my private capacity, I am a partner in the real estate brokerage firm NAI Alliance Carson City. Loomis, the design consultant on this Curry Street project, is a client of NAI Alliance. Therefore, NAI Alliance has a substantial and continuing business relationship with Loomis. Because a reasonable person in my position would be materially affected by this relationship, I will be abstaining from participating on item 6B. So the way we will handle this is that we will have the presentation given, and I will handle item 6A, and then I will turn the gavel over to the vice chair, who will handle item 6B.
All right, good evening, Board. Dan Stuckey, City Engineer for the record. I'm joined here by Mike Bennett, who's the Director of Engineering over at Loomis & Associates, and Loomis is the lead design engineer for the Curry Streetscape project. So tonight, I just wanted to kind of give you an update on where we're at. It's been a long time since we've been to RTC, I believe back in 2015 with the downtown 90% is the last time that the downtown project was back here. So I kind of want to just give an update of a little history on that, and then also an update on where we're at with the Curry project and moving forward. And I've got a presentation here, and the last slide is about the cross streets, so it'll tie nicely in to everything. So a little background. So, back in 2015 or 2014, I guess, when the design started, the downtown project, so Carson Street improvements as well as the Curry Street improvements were all one project essentially, and the plan at that time was to advance them to a 60% design level. And at that point, you would split the Curry, kind of put a hold on the Curry improvements, the design on that, and advance forward with the Carson design and advance that to final and then construct, which obviously happened in 2016. And then at a later date, come back and finish up that Curry Street design and construct in 2018. So really where we have been, it got approved, funding got approved at the board in November, I believe, of 2017 to kind of advance the 60% design of Curry. And so the design team has progressed that design, but also we received some funding from RAC to do some beautification improvements to the cross streets. And so that design basically just started in December. And so we've advanced that design from 0 to 90 basically within the last 3 months. So really where we are today, the 90% design has just been finished. We're about a couple weeks away from finishing and completing final design. And then we're anticipating starting construction at the end of April. So that kind of gives you a little history on where we have been and kind of the plan forward. I did want to talk about, as you can see on the screen there, I just kind of wanted to highlight some of I think, kind of the cool features and discussion points on the project. This is a nice illustrative plan here of the improvements. So as you can see, highlighted in red, just kind of, there's a lot of landscape improvements, also some wider sidewalks in areas to kind of match what we did with downtown Carson Street. And then you can see the big bulb areas where the pavers are and some seating walls. So again, essentially a lot of the Curry improvements are kind of matching what was done on Carson Street and tying those projects together to kind of create that urban core. What you can't see on here is there is a significant amount of utility infrastructure improvements with this project. And again, I'm an engineer, so the utility improvements, they excite me a little more than the beauty, I guess I should say. But as you can imagine, the downtown core has some of the oldest utilities in the city. I mean, we're talking, 60, 80 years old, some of these water lines and sewer lines and stormwater lines that are down there. So a big part of this project, like I said, I think roughly over $1 million is going into upgrading those utilities and replacing those. So, I think that kind of gets lost in it, but there's a lot of great benefits with the infrastructure improvements. This is the north section of the project. A couple things I've highlighted here are, you can see Telegraph Square there. So we're proposing new planter beds. Those 4 planter areas will have kind of an updated look on the facade of those, and new trees in there as well. And then the paver crosswalks in that area. I kind of think of Telegraph Square as somewhat the focal point of Curry Street within the project limits. So we're trying to really, make that a nice feature. A lot of people gather in that area. So that's been really focus of this project. And then I highlighted some of the cross-street beautification improvements. One, there's some stamped concrete that's been in that alleyway for 25 or 30 years, and it's pretty deteriorated, crumbling all over the place. So as part of this project, we're going to be replacing that with new pavers along that side, the alleyway there between Telegraph and Spear. Here's some other, I think there's the existing arch that's on the Telegraph side of the Telegraph Spear alleyway. It's this wooden arch that's pretty worn. You guys are probably familiar with what it looks like. So we're looking at upgrading that with a freestanding arch that kind of, beautifies that alleyway and makes it, we're also looking at overhead string lighting across the alleyway to improve safety, to make people feel safe walking through it at night, and make it look nicer. So those are some of the alley improvements there. Just kind of want to reiterate, these are the furnishings. These are the same ones that are on downtown Carson Street. So these have been decided on Those will be applied throughout Curry corridor as well. So you got the benches and the street lights. And I know I mentioned at the board meeting, but another big component of this project is there's a lot of gas street lights that run down Curry. They're really hard to maintain, old street lights. So we're looking at replacing that with more energy efficient LED lights. They provide better lighting and much easier to maintain. So that's just kind of a highlight on some of the furnishings. I have 4 slides on trees and plants, and I don't know a ton about trees and plants, so I just wanted to kind of basically put it back out there that we're matching what was planned on Carson. It's going to be, continuous between the corridors, but here's kind of a, show what the trees will look like when they're mature. Here's some pictures of the shrubs that we've selected to use on the project. Same thing with the flowers, and then, some of those ornamental grasses that will be dispersed throughout the planter areas. And with that, I kind of wanted to transition into the cross streets. So, when we got the RAC funding, that was very much focused on beautification improvements. It didn't include money to basically replace the pavement on these streets. So when we got started in design, we really looked at these streets and, they're already out there paving Curry Street. And so we wanted to look at the condition of these cross streets and see if it made sense to actually improve these as well. And one thing we do is, and you guys are aware as RTC, with the pavement survey that we've recently completed, the van goes down and drives and looks at crack density and width and depth of cracks and kind of puts a standardized score, which is called the Pavement Condition Index. And we use that as a planning level to kind of prioritize projects and know kind of where our really bad streets are, where our better streets are, and where our really good streets are. As you can see, the PCI scores for these streets are below 50, which below 40 is essentially, well, just to give you an idea on the scoring index, better than 80 is we consider a good street. It's in good condition. We kind of just put that off. It's got a lot of usable life left. Between like 65 and 80, that's kind of the sweet spot for the surface seals that we do to kind of help prolong the life of the streets. And then once you get down to below 50, that's where you're looking at, major rehabilitation, major reconstruction. Below 40 we consider the cutoff that street is basically failing right now. You can see these scores on these cross streets, and I went out there and took pictures, but I don't think the pictures really even do it justice, and we're kind of zoomed out from them. But there's alligator cracking all along and lots of cracks, and there's been a ton of utility trenches on those roadways. I mean, they're really beat up. So just from, even if we were just looking at roads to replace, the scores there. Another thing too, we don't just go off scores. We have a pavement guy who's, I would call him an expert. He's got 25 years of experience. I sent him out there. I said, here, let me know what your thoughts are. We also have another engineer that's an expert in pavement. He looked at it. And they even think these scores might even be better than what they actually are. So we think we need to replace these. We want to replace it. It's the right decision to make. The other thing too, the contractor's already mobilizing down there doing the Curry improvements. So as far as cost savings, it makes a lot of sense to do these cross streets with the Curry improvements. And lastly, I think with the businesses down there, they've been disrupted in 2016 with Carson. And, with Curry, there's going to be a disruption with the construction there this spring and summer. So we'd like to avoid, if they're that low of a score, potentially in the next 1 to 5 years, we'd have to go back down there anyway and do something here. So it just makes a lot of sense to do as one project. And so that's the request for the $300,000 there to basically allow us to replace the pavement, do a roadbed modification to that, and, incorporate it with this project. So with that, that's my presentation. I can talk to you a little bit about construction, some of the things we're doing. We met with the DBA last week, Downtown Business Association, gave them an update on the project, talked a lot about design, got a lot of feedback from them on, what went well on Carson Street for some of the businesses down there and what we can improve on. We also have a meeting scheduled on March 22nd over at the Sheriff's Ormsby conference room over there. And that will be open to the public. We'll have the contractor there at that one. And at that meeting, that's where a lot of the construction details like phasing and sequencing and how the construction is going to look. So a lot of the people will be able to ask questions there. That'll happen March 22nd. And the other thing I wanted to talk about, we are pushing out a lot of our updates through our Carson Proud website. Rachel Snyder over in IT has done a lot of updates to the website. It looks really good. She pushed out some updates, just giving what's going on with the design and when we anticipate starting construction. And the other thing with that is we'll have a cone zone map, which we did for downtown Carson too, which will allow people, the businesses, and also the residents in the area to basically go online and look, hey, this street's closed, this week for this construction, and next week, Telegraph's going to be closed, and help the businesses kind of plan accordingly. So there's a lot of updates that we're doing there that I think will be really beneficial to the residents and the businesses of Carson City. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Dan, can you go over the budget numbers for Curry Street and the side streets just briefly, because that information is not in our package? So
yeah,
we're asking for $300,000 here, and that is just for pavement replacement, or is that complete reconstruction of the 5 streets? And does this cover all of the outstanding costs, or is there going to be more coming? That's the kind of information I'd like to get.
Yeah, so roughly ballpark on the Curry Street project, I think there's about $2.2 million that is infrastructure tax funds, and those are addressing the Curry portion, not the cross streets. And then in the utility funds spread out between water, sewer, and stormwater, there's about, I want to say another like 1.3 million. It basically brings it up to 3.7 million for Curry. And the RAC, the 550,000 for those cross streets, it brings it up to 3.7 million in funding for Curry and those beautification improvements on the cross streets. So this 300,000 to do the reconstruction of those cross streets will bring the total funding up to about 400,000 for the overall.
4 million.
Or sorry, 4 million for the overall Curry Street and cross streets. Yes, 4 million.
And the total budget for all of this?
It's the budget's for like about 4,050,000 basically. I don't have the number. I should have brought that number right in front of me, but.
One other question. When we reconstructed Carson Street, there were some unforeseen issues with elevation changes on some of the underground utilities. Are we anticipating the same issues when we do the cross streets? Are there going to be elevation change issues that we're going to have to deal with?
Yeah, and I can let Mike jump in here, but I think we've done a much better job during the design stage is really figuring out kind of what those elevations are and trying to avoid that during construction. So I think we'll be in a lot better position this time around. I don't know if you want to add into the history.
Commissioner Bonkowski, I think the one you were talking about was a sewer manhole that was replaced on the Carson Street project. When we replaced the manhole, we extended the pipe 10 feet or so either direction. What had ended up happening is there was a big dip in the line that when we extended the pipe, we made the dip worse, basically. So that created a situation where we had to replace pipe all the way down the block. We don't see the same thing happening again. All of those lines have been TV'd. We haven't seen dips in those lines. So I mean, as of right now, we don't foresee the same thing.
Any questions from the commissioners? Go ahead, Lori, and then Mark.
So really my question is, you're asking us to appropriate $300,000 from next year's funding cycle, which it's not necessarily an issue, but I'm kind of making the decision in a vacuum because I don't have any of the other projects or dollars that are available or any other such thing. So do you see any other major projects online for next year, or will they all be small projects so that I just need a little more reassurance of what I'm doing?
I hear you. That's a great question. Thank you. So, this is sort of a unique situation in that, as you know, the Curry Street project is moving ahead very quickly. And, as Dan discussed, this, being able to stretch our limited roadway dollars by minimizing the mobilization and doing this cross-street project at the same time as Curry, it's just a smart decision. So you can anticipate that the RTC budget will come to you in April. In that April budget for pavement projects, what you can expect to see is a line item for this Curry Cross Streets project for $300,000. If we win some of our outstanding grant proposals, such as the flat project up on at the top of King Street that we put in a couple months ago, or some of those other smaller grants, the PATH grants that we put in. You would see those line items as well. And then you're going to see a larger kind of an open-ended pavement line item in the budget this time. Staff are working on a pavement management plan right now. I want to get better about being more transparent about how we make pavement decisions going forward. So that pavement management plan will come forward concurrently in April, so you can see what we're planning to do. If we get RTC's direction to move forward with the pavement management plan, we'll then move forward with selection of projects for the remainder of fiscal year $19 using that plan. The intent of that plan is to maintain flexibility for projects such as this project where the city has a real benefit and we can really extend and stretch our dollars. So that said, to answer your question directly, Lori, you won't expect to see a bunch of competing projects at that budget meeting. And then there'll be an opportunity late summer, early fall for RTC to approve the recommended pavement projects for next fiscal year.
And then just no concern or issue of waiting to see whether we get the Tiger grant and whether or not we have to do any construction delays for Curry because of South Carson. Again, I'm just being super
Yeah, so, I mean,
here.
Lucia, feel free to jump in, but I mean, the Tiger and South Carson is basically like a whole separate thing from Curry as far, is that what, like, they really don't affect
I know
each
that,
other.
but if you don't have a Tiger grant or something happens there, do I need this 300,000 in that project more because it has a required deadline by DOT? I'm just making sure that the whole picture is addressed.
In any case, the city is positioned to move forward on using the $5.1 million from NDOT to meet the freeway agreement requirements that we do a complete streets project starting construction in 2019. Whether or not we receive the Tiger, we'll have to look at how we meet that total project budget. Yes, but that won't affect our ability to meet that agreement with NDOT.
Can you roll it back to the first shot on the drawings of the streets? I just have a question for safety. One more.
Sorry.
That's okay, I'm waiting. Yeah, it froze. Oh, there we go. That's fine. That's good enough
this one?
right there.
Okay.
Any one of those two. I just have a question where the stop bar is when the side street's coming out. You're going to stop there, and there's no way you're going to see traffic from there, so you're going to have to crawl out and sit in the middle of the pedestrian crossing to see traffic before you move out again. So I don't know how you fix that, but that's just not a good situation because you're going to be blocking the pedestrian path while you're waiting to see if the traffic's clear because of the way the landscaping is, and then the cars block your view. So I was just looking for maybe a better way to do those intersections coming off to allow people the stop bar to be your stop bar versus a stop bar that really isn't where you're going to stop.
Commissioner Kimbrough, you bring up a good point. I think in this situation, though, because of the road is being necked down, the traffic is more in the center of the right-of-way, if you will, and that site triangle is actually probably bigger than it is today. So even though you're going to be stopped further back behind the crosswalk, there's not a big blockage or an obstruction in your view. Those corners, those bulb outs on the corners, you're still going to be able to see past them, the driver will be able to see around them. So I don't foresee a need to have to roll through the crosswalk. I assume you're looking at like the Spear Street Telegraph.
Yeah, all the one
Or
layers.
Spear Street, Curry Street.
Because if you look to the left, the cars curb parking there, you're going to have to get out so you can see around those cars if it's a big 3/4-ton truck sitting there.
Okay, I was looking at the Curry.
So any one of those, and it looks like the plant barriers, but I know you're not going to put big trees to block the whole vision.
Right,
It's just a design that I was looking for. Maybe there's a little bit safer, so you're not crawling out in the pedestrian path to get clearance, but it just looks that way from the drawing. And I don't know how you fix that.
Yeah, I mean, I know our roadway engineer has looked at those areas specifically, and I think one thing too to consider with cars pulling out into Curry's a very much in this 5-block section is very much a low-speed area. Do you know what the speed limit, is it 20, 25? 25. So I guess that helps in the sense that cars aren't going to be, pulling out really fast to catch up. Exactly. And I think, like Mike said, I think, it will, I believe, improve on, some of the existing conditions, sight distance in those areas in a lot of cases. But yeah, I mean, that's a good point.
Just something to think about.
Yeah.
As you move forward, how to make it safe there. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, yes, I do have a question, actually. So on the cross streets, is there utility? I can't question at all?
No.
Not even-
No, because you're not participating.
You're
I'm
not
sorry, I should have asked you.
Oh, well, forget it.
Sorry. My bad.
Where's the buzzer?
Yep.
Just, can I have a little follow-up? Really, so, I really agree with him that I'm concerned there, so maybe it's just from the picture, we can't see the placement of the trees as well, and just to make sure they're pulled back far enough. Like you said, that there's great vision, not blocking the cars, so, and maybe it's just the picture that's prettied up.
Or maybe they can't park maybe within 3 spaces up to the intersection.
Yeah.
So maybe there's just some easy fixes. And I know you engineers can fix stuff like that.
I just want to go on record too, looking at it, it's like, well, it
Yeah.
looks pretty, but I know when people are backing and doing things and seeing trees, and even if it's 25 miles an hour, I don't want people getting in car accidents.
Yeah, no, I hear your concerns. I wish our lead roadway design engineer was here because they probably looked at it, but we'll bring it up to them.
That's
And it would
great.
only be on the south side of the intersections.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely run that by our people.
Okay, is there any member of the public that would like to speak to this issue? I see nobody approaching, so I will bring this item back to the commission and entertain a motion.
I'll do, okay. I move to approve the allocation of $300,000 from the RTC fund to reconstruct the roadway for 5 cross streets between Carson Street and Curry Street, including Robinson Street, Spear Street, Telegraph Street, Proctor Street, and Musser Street as part of the downtown Curry Streetscape Improvement Project.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Okay, the vote is 3-0-1. And at this time, I will turn the gavel for item 6B over to the vice chair.
Okay. Since we combined the items, is there any further discussion necessary on the 90% item for 6B? It's you, me, and you. It's just you and me. Okay. Okay. Is there any public comment on item 6B? We're moving right along. Okay, I will entertain a motion then on item 6B.
I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors acceptance of the 90% design of the downtown Curry Streetscape Improvement Project.
And I'll make that second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion is 2.
All right, that was fun. On to item 6C for possible action to approve cooperative agreement PR 634-17-063 between the Carson City RTC and the Nevada Department of Transportation for complete streets improvements along South Carson Street, and to authorize the Public Works Director to sign future amendments to this agreement regarding time extensions or a change in the value of funding up to 10% of the initial funding amount. And Dirk, I believe you're taking this one.
Thank you, sir. This is a typical agreement between Carson City and the Nevada Department of Transportation. Back in 2017, Carson City was awarded a TAP grant, Transportation Alternatives Program grant, that provided money for complete street improvements along South Carson Street. Additionally, in 2017, the RTC allocated STBG funding, Surface Transportation Block Grant funding, towards the South Carson Street corridor improvements. Both are federal funds, and both require an agreement with NDOT. So we have one agreement with both types of federal funds. The improvements that you would see with this money include sidewalk and ADA improvements primarily. The design is in progress. By having this agreement, it's going to allow us to seek a reimbursement when it comes time for construction. Construction is anticipated for the spring of 2019. So that concludes my comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the commissioners? I see none. Any public comment? I see none. I'll bring it back to the commission for a motion.
I'll make a motion, move to approve cooperative agreement PR 634-17-063 between the Carson City RTC and the Nevada Department of Transportation for complete street improvements along South Carson Street, and to authorize the Public Works Director to sign future amendments to this agreement regarding time extension or a change in the value of funding up to 10% of the initial funding amount.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Passes unanimously. We are now on item 6D for possible action to direct staff to utilize approximately $630,000 in local fiscal year 17-18 pavement preservation capital funding for patching and slurry sealing on Fairview Drive from Roop Street to US 50 East. Lucia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So pavement preservation projects for the 2017-18 fiscal year were approved by RTC in February of 2017. Approximately $840,000 remains in the undesignated project fund for this fiscal year, and that's primarily because of how the budgeting cycle works. So in February, RTC approved the set of projects, but when we finally got the actual budget numbers, we ended up with some cost savings on some capital improvement projects from the previous fiscal year, as well as we had some higher than expected gas and sales tax revenue. So there's some extra money in that undesignated project fund. Using a set of evaluation criteria, staff has identified this slurry seal project on Fairview from Roop Street to US 50 East that runs approximately 3.2 miles. The factors we used to identify this project included consideration of its functional class. So this is an arterial roadway, and it's a major connector from South Carson up to US 50 East. Staff also looked at the city's pavement management program to really understand pavement conditions citywide and make sure that this is the right project. And indeed, staff do recommend that this is the project we use this money on. We also looked at whether the treatment will actually extend the life of the facility versus just being a Band-Aid that would buy us time just to use money or some other reason. But this is truly a good use of funding based on that pavement condition and some infield manual inspections of the pavement by both Carson City staff, our engineers, as well as UNR representatives. Prior to the opening of the freeway this past summer, as you know, Fairview had a lot of traffic. It was beaten up. So I did just want to mention that now that the volumes have decreased, we can really understand the condition of that facility. And now's a really good time to restore that facility. I think we owe it to the residents and the businesses that use that area to bring it up to good condition. Crack sealing of that portion was completed in December, so you may have seen that if you've driven out there. And that's in preparation for this project, but also just because it was really needed. If approved, staff will move forward with design of the project. Some additional preparation that's needed is there's some pothole filling that needs to happen, and then before we would go out there in the spring, we'd clean off the surface of the road. There is money for this project that's budgeted, as I mentioned. Once it's approved by you, we will move it into a project-specific account for that. So that concludes my comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Lucia, are there any other treatments that would be involved in this project other than just the pothole filling?
There may be some strategic patching before we do the sealing, and that's based on specific areas of Fairview. Out by Bud-Eye, a little bit north of East 5th Street, north of the roundabout there. There's some more damaged areas that may require some patching, but that was all built into the 630 estimate.
Any questions from the commissioners? Mark?
Speaking of businesses along that drive, is there any thought after you slurry it to restripe it for a turn lane into some of those down closer to Lowe's so I don't have to slam on my brakes for people going to the gym all the time there? And
We had quite a bit of discussion about this at a staff level. There was some, especially me, we thought there was a need to do that center turn lane. What happens is if you add that center turn lane, you lose capacity. There was some concern, what happens if there's a shutdown in the freeway, that traffic again will go down onto Fairview, so we were reluctant in reducing that capacity. So we started actually playing around with some other ideas. Do we want to reduce lanes in one direction versus the other? We started to end up with a situation where we would lose the bike lanes. And we felt that wasn't the right move. We do have a complete streets policy that we wanted to kind of try and follow there. We did some research, and what the research was showing us is that in the rural areas with high speeds, that center turn lane provides greater safety. When you go into your urban areas and you have your lower speeds, that center turn lane wasn't bringing a degree of safety. And I think some of it has to do with your lower speeds and the fact that you're in an urban setting and you're expecting more turns. And so, based on all that consideration, we decided that the best thing to do was to keep the lane configuration as is. And additionally, as Lucia pointed out, as you know, is that the volume has been reduced. So before we had folks doing the same turning movement with a significant amount of traffic more. The traffic has reduced quite a bit, more than 50%, and so we think that the situation is safer just with that reduction, and that the current configuration is the best way forward.
thank you. Good, you were prepared. Thanks a lot.
Any additional questions?
Just a
Okay,
thought.
go ahead.
And I'm assuming that means you looked at accidents or anything else on that road in that consideration?
Correct. We did look at accidents. We pulled the data. We didn't see any fatalities, large frequency, and so based on that, there is some property damage crashes, kind of probably because you have some stopping when you get off the highway and you have the rear ending, and that's common with property damage to the cars. But we didn't see fatalities. We didn't see serious injuries.
No accidents, okay.
I will add to your question, Mr. Kimbrough, that in the other project using the STBG funding from Fairview, from South Carson to Roop, that portion, we are looking at an intersection reconfiguration to identify whether 3 westbound left turn lanes are needed to go south on South Carson. So we are looking at that as a possible adjustment.
That would be nice.
And I was just going to ask you if the concrete dividers were going to remain the same or be reconfigured. Sounds like they could be reconfigured.
Yet to be determined, Mr. Chair.
Is there any public comment on this item? I see nobody approaching. So this requires action, so I will bring this back to the commission and entertain a motion.
It isn't really your turn.
He's like, darn it.
Yeah, gosh, incompetence up here. So I move to direct staff to utilize approximately $630,000 in local fiscal year 2017-2018 pavement preservation capital funding for patching and slurry sealing on Fairview Drive from Roop Street to US 50 East.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I do have a discussion item on this. Why the wording approximately 630,000? Are we either allocating 630,000 or not? I mean, it seems to me that if we're making a motion, we're allocating a certain dollar amount.
Good point.
To move it.
Or do we just leave it at your discretion?
Up to you, Mr. Chair.
Approximately is a,
2%?
That's a fair point. I think it came to, it's either right under by a couple dollars or right over by a couple dollars, and I think I rounded.
so what's your preference?
$630,005, so.
630,000 is perfect. You can remove the approximately if you'd like.
Would the motion maker entertain that, and the seconder?
Yes, I'll remove the approximately from the motion.
Yes. Second.
All right,
Yours.
we have a revised motion and a revised second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. It passes unanimously, and we are now on to item 7 on the agenda, internal communications and administrative matters, non-action items, and we will start with item 7A, transportation manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mentioned this during the CAMPO meeting that our public comment period is open right now for our TIP amendment for that STBG funding for that project on Fairview from South Carson down to Roop. That public comment period is open until the 28th of this month. So we encourage the public and anyone else to comment on that. My second update is that our public participation plan also requires me to inform you that over the past month or so, we've made some administrative modifications to our TIP. And this was to reconcile some differences in language and funding regarding the freeway path from the linear ditch to Colorado, that project. Once we set up our agreement with NDOT, there were just some minor discrepancies in language, so those in our document have been updated to reflect the final agreement with NDOT. State Street and Long Street. State Street is where the Starbucks is on William Street. State and Long, as you may remember, we had a ped fatality out there back in October. Staff took this really seriously. We hired an independent traffic engineering firm to really look at the intersection, look at the approaches, help us understand what we could do better to make sure it didn't happen again. That engineering firm provided us with a recommendation. Based on that recommendation, we have installed some additional speed limit and pedestrian crossing signage. And we are also setting up a contract with a contractor to do some striping. We have a new striping configuration which will narrow the lanes coming down that eastbound Long Street where folks tend to speed, so we're hoping to cut down on the speeds. We're also reducing or increasing the no parking area on that intersection to improve the sight distances so the peds are really visible and it just increased safety right there. And as soon as it warms up in the next couple weeks, they should do that striping. So I'm really happy to see that move forward and happy to tell you that we're doing something about it.
Lucia, did the engineer's analysis take into account the subdivisions being built there, future impacts?
They looked at land use, that new subdivision and the existing apartments who were concerned about the no parking area. You know, they have garages there. There is still parking that we're keeping on State Street, that north-south street, and we're not extending the no parking zone. If you may remember, there was some time in the past where it was extended really far. We're not extending it that far, we're just extending it the minimum to bring that sight distance up to code, up to engineering standard, so that we can increase safety but still maintain parking for those residents.
So how many parking spaces are you taking?
It's depending on the northeast, west, southeast, west, it's 2 to 3 spaces per corner. It's not very far, but it's enough to get that crosswalk visibility when you're approaching it.
But we're talking 4, 6 park. That place has parking. I mean, those are some good parallel parkers there.
It is, and the residents are concerned, but staff went out to talk to them, and ultimately someone died, and so we need to be safety first. So that's my third update. And the last thing, I received an email this morning. Our Western Nevada Safe Routes to School program, we have a Nevada Moves Day, which is on March 23rd? March 21st. As of today, we have the highest participation ever of folks signed up to participate in that. We have 23 schools signed up to be attended by almost 13,000 students, so we're really excited. There's a Board of Supervisors proclamation scheduled for March 15th in advance of the 21st Nevada Moves Day. So just wanted to let you know that we're excited for that.
Everybody loves walking with Courtney.
Yes, they do.
Is that schools from other districts? Oh, okay, because I was like, we don't even have that many students. Okay.
Western Nevada Safe Routes to Schools covers Carson, Lyon, Douglas, and Story counties.
Okay, that makes sense. I was like, wait a minute, we only have 88. I'm like, every one of ours?
That concludes my manager's report. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to item 7B, Street Operations Activity Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So keep in mind, these reports are always a couple months delayed, so these are activities as of December. Some key numbers to focus in on is in the winter when the temperatures are colder, we do our crack sealing. That's when cracks are the widest, so you're seeing some crack sealing happening. We do have some ditch clearing down in the stormwater section. Again, that's, in the winter when you have a lot of debris come down on the trees. And otherwise, just pretty normal. You'll see at the very bottom the weather events that those are happening if and as we get actual winter weather.
Just for clarification to make sure I've got the right report, because I use these numbers. It says it was prepared December 7th, and it's December 27th activity. Is it actually prepared in January, and it's December's activity, or November? I just want to know which one it is.
You are so keen. Yes, it was prepared January.
Okay.
I apologize.
Well, that's okay. I use it in my
This is the latest
newsletter,
data.
so, okay. Thank you.
Any questions on the Street Operation Activity Report? All right, Project Status Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll keep this one brief. There hasn't been a lot of changes because it is the winter. On the freeway multi-use path, the first project in that packet, since this was posted, the project has actually been completed. The punch list was completed, and we've signed off on that project. On Sierra Vista Lane reconstruction, the update there since this was posted is that construction has begun. The first pieces are drainage and river work. So we're moving forward on that project on schedule. No other updates. I'll skip forward a few pages to the CDBG North Carson Street improvements. Since last month, we did add in that second installment of the roughly $79,000 of the CDBG funds. Design at this point is for the most part complete, and we're on schedule to go to bid this month. The contract for that, when staff are ready with the recommendation, will come to RTC. And that concludes my comments on all these. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
It's dropped off, but it was before on the blue line that we had. We had RAC funding that came in on blue line, and I know that the project was changed a little bit to do more in the mobile app arena versus the blue tape and stuff. So was there project dollars left over?
For the blue line, there are project dollars left over. And what's going to happen is those dollars are going to be used to remove this stripe, and so there will be a little bit of funding left over. But we're waiting for the right time. We're waiting for the visitor center to be ready to have those mobile apps, to have some of the wayfinding signs up prior to taking down the blue line. So it's kind of a timing issue right now. So it's just kind of dependent on the Visitors Bureau.
So the project's actually still outstanding for work to get completed. Could you let me know, though, what the balance, because then that would revert back to RAC?
Correct.
Okay, because I'm...
And I think their discussion was to let that money go to the Visitors Bureau to help them with the wayfinding or for other, and that's the way I understand it, and I can get some clarification on that.
have to go back, might have to go back to RAC.
Okay.
I don't quite remember, there was some discussion on that, but it was, I believe it was $25,000.
That's why I'm asking.
And just under $23,000 was the requirement for the removal, so the remainder is about $2,000. In terms of when we met as a group, there was some discussions of that any money that was left over from RAC, could that be used? And I think we left it that we would check, and so it's hanging out there. But it's going to be around $2,000.
Okay, thank you.
For the record, that was Darren Schultz, Public Works Director.
On the Carson City Freeway multi-use path, the one that's just been completed, I've ridden that several times, and I still have a concern about the pavement, condition there. And I know it was sealed prior to the winter, and I just want to make sure that the city's going to review that at the 1-year warranty period to see its condition and take any additional measures that may be needed to make it whole.
That's a good comment, and we are aware of those concerns, and we have it on our list to continue to check and seal it as needed.
Future agenda items.
Future agenda items. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Goring will be running next month's meeting, as you know. The March agenda should be fairly light. Staff are going through the bid process to select a contractor for maintenance of landscaping underneath our overpasses, underneath the freeways. So once staff have a recommendation on a contractor for that, that'll come probably next month in March. Also in March, we're going to kick off a series, a couple-part series of presentations related to traffic signals. I know Supervisor Bagwell has been interested in that, as have others. As you may be aware, Carson City maintains existing agreements with Lyon County and Douglas County. We maintain their signals. Story County is installing their first ever traffic signal related to USA Parkway. They've approached the city and asked us if we can help them with theirs as well. So staff will be bringing that agreement to you in March. In April then, staff will also bring you a presentation on, just in general, what we're doing with our signals and coordination in Carson City. At a staff level, we're also bringing in Dr. Tien from UNR, University of Nevada, Reno, to provide an update on what the state of the practice is for research for signal coordination and what can be done. There's a regional effort to kind of coordinate signals, and he's going to kind of talk about that, where the industry is going and how Carson's participating in that. So that'll be in April. That concludes my comments on that. Thank you.
Are there any future agenda items from the commissioners? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 8 on the agenda, board comments, information only. Any status reports or comments from members of the RTC board? Nope. We have none. All right, item 9 on the agenda tonight is the final public comment. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment tonight? Nobody's approaching, so we will move on to item 10. The next meeting is scheduled after the CAMPO meeting on Wednesday, March 14th, right here in this room. And I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Thank you very much. We are adjourned. Thank you for participating. And happy Valentine's Day.